Hi everybody, Ali Akbarian here from Mobility Engineering, back again for your Q&As this year. We've had a little bit of a break on the content and the Q&As. We've been busy planning and we've been busy on the road doing expos, so we're a little bit sorry about that, but we're back on board, back in full swing, and we're ready to get that content going again. So, as we always say with our little flag here, help us by increasing us to now, let's say, 10,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button down there. We'll keep that content coming. We've got a lot of great stuff planned. I know Omi's been putting some videos together for you already. More of that stuff's going to be coming. So keep those questions coming. Keep hitting that subscribe button and we'll keep the content coming. All right, so let's get into today's questions. Today is a little bit of a technical one, and we have a sample quickie wheelchair from our good friends at Sunrise Medical here to use for this purpose. So the question is basically, what is the height clearances for wheelchair passengers in a vehicle? So that's a fairly wide and general vaguish question, so I'm going to break it down a little bit into the background. Effectively, we've got an OT who's contacted us and saying the child is in a wheelchair like this, and they are traveling in the vehicle, and their head is almost actually hitting the roof. It's about, like a centimetre away from the roof, and sometimes when they bump up and down, the head hits the roof. And that doesn't seem like it's okay, so what is actually the rules, and, what can we or shouldn't we be doing about that? So we're going to cover that for you today. What is the rules around head clearance of a wheelchair occupant? So the first thing I've done is a little bit of research just to explain to you a little bit around what is a headspace requirement. So there is a standard out there called VSB5. It's around additional seats and seating in vehicles, and this, in a roundabout way, maybe not directly, but indirectly, would be classified as an additional seat in the vehicle because it's in the back of the vehicle and it's an additional seat that you're going to be sitting in, right? So we can use the guidelines of VSB5 additional seatings to help us guide us into what is the requirement. And in VSB5, which is a guideline for additional seats in vehicles in Australia, it specifies what is the head space requirements. So what they have is actually a measurement, which I'm going to demonstrate to you and then show you kind of how it works. So what you will find is they have a measurement which is, it's quite a complex measurement. It's called the seating reference height, and it's effectively like an imaginary pivot point of a 95th percentile male. I'm getting very technical here, but I'm going to break it down to be simple. A pivot point, a pin, let's say I put a pin in the middle of a pivot point of my hip, that where I pivot, let's say around about there. From that point upwards, it is around about 900 millimeter clearance is what we need. So if I was to kind of, I guess, make it a bit simpler for us to measure on the field, what we're looking at is roughly 925 millimeters of space required from the seat cushion up. So that is actually what the requirement is, and I'll show you just very quickly before I get back into it, the diagram that we are talking about here. So does that come up there? So you see what we're talking about. This is the headspace requirement in this diagram. So it's got this kind of a line there, and it sort of goes front and back like that, and then side to side as well. That's sort of what we're trying to recreate in this video here. So when you look into their requirements, what they have there is they have a requirement of, let's call it 925 millimeters from that point there to the top there, right? So to give you a perspective, roughly what that means in terms of if let's say I'm an average kind of male sitting in terms of height, sitting there, there's around about 1.5 space, about 15 centimeters above my head. So what I'm going to do is actually going to line it up on this seat so you can, and I'm going to sit there so you can actually see what we're talking about in the real world example. But if I was to just put this up here, right, and that right there is where my roof has to be. Anything lower than that, it's basically not allowed, right? So that's quite a fair bit of clearance you need. And to give you a bit of perspective on that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this up down the bottom here, and then we are going to straighten this up, set it up down the bottom. We're going to move it up to the point where it is that 925. So what we've done here is I've just set this up. So the top of this point here is now 925 millimeters from the cushion there, right? So that's basically the required headspace for an additional seat in a vehicle. So if you want to sort of see what my clearance is above my head, you can see when I'm sitting here, there's probably around about, that takes me to around about that kind of 4 or 5 centimetre mark. We're being very rough here. But if I go across there, it's around about 12 centimetres. So we've done a video in the past where we've talked about 10 to 15 centimetres, a hand span, depending on the size of your hand, is what you want in terms of the space above. And that roughly correlates with this measurement here, which is that 925 measurement of the seat back, which you want to do. It's not exactly 925. Like I said, it's a bit more of a complex way of measuring it, and we're not going to get into the technicalities of that because it's a very complex automotive standard around seating. But to try and deduce it down to first basic principles of measurement, we can say that if I go 925 from the seat cushion up and I make sure that I've got that clearance, then I'm definitely going to clear all the requirements and all the clearances and all the regulations around seating, and I'm going to make sure I comply with that. So 925 from the seat back, or if you want to just call it an average person, a good hand span above their head. Again, these are kind of like everyday ways that I can measure that. So yeah, hopefully that can help with what is my required headspace clearance above my wheelchair when I'm traveling in the vehicle. So yeah, as we said, thank you very much for sending in those questions. Hit that subscribe button like we've got on the flag there. Help us get to that 10,000 subscriber mark, and we'll see you next time.